Good morning, everybody. It's Ken Stones from Fake Not. Fake Not is the community of professionals who are putting in hard work to create sustainable brands in this era of fake everything that we face today. I have a special guest who has started her own firm just recently, Whitney Antwine, and I'm going to bring her in here with my very smooth professional transitions. Here we go.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Always, I got to work on these intros.
I really want like an old school Full House, like.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty funny because, like, the first couple that I did, I think I was speaking at about 10% of the pace that I needed to, and so you listen to it and you're just like, oh my God, speed it up, man. But but thanks. Hey, Whitney, thanks for joining today. And we have a great topic. So you just started your firm not too long ago, which is always pretty exciting. And your firm is, I think, as we were talking about it, a digital relationship firm, which is, I think, a really cool way of thinking about companies now. Because we often, as consultants or agencies, we often think of ourselves as full service or specialized or this or that. But you talk about yourself as a relationship firm, which I think is really cool. So, and particularly around your whole focus around finding your voice, building your presence. Do you want to talk just for a minute about what you're doing and the joy of starting your own company?
Yeah. There's a lot of coffee involved. But Want Wine Creative is, I started calling it a digital solutions agency because I know the struggle of owning a small business. That's where my career began, was helping small business owners. And you don't know what you're doing. You're so focused working on your company that you're like, what is a website? What is Facebook? What is Instagram? What are all these things? And how do I use them? Because there are a lot out there. So really, it's just an opportunity to work with brands, like you said, to help find their voice and establish their presence for digital audiences. But I love the term digital relationship agency because this finding your voice really is about how are you going to create a relationship with someone in the digital space and not come off salesy, which is really hard.
Yeah. I think that's what, when we were talking a couple of weeks ago and I was trying to convince you to to be on my show.
You twisted my arm. It's fine.
Yeah. But it's this amazing thing because I think we get so caught up and what I was intrigued with is this whole idea of where you're focused on, hey, the most important thing is finding your voice. And I think that's a really important aspect because we get so caught up in what's the copy line that we need to be used. So what's the message what's the brand, what's the tone we need to use. And I mean, those are all great things, part of a brand architecture, but it's not finding your voice. And we get caught up in the marketing speak. And I think so often just like, get out there, try this, see if it works, which is all fine. But this idea of finding your voice is fundamentally important. And how, I think the one thing I wanted to talk about today is, how do you find your voice? Because it isn't just your features and benefits and the copy that you're writing to try and sell your stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, finding your voice. Voice is sort of like a buzzword right now, but it's really it's another way of saying identity. It's figuring out what is your brand, what is your business, what does it look like, what vibe is it giving off? That's such a millennial thing to say. But really, like, I think nowadays, especially with platforms like social media, where you do get to interact with brands, you don't have a choice but to have a voice, So it has to be conversational and approachable, and it needs to fit the industry that you're in, because an investor is going to speak completely differently than someone who owns a coffee shop, who owns an indoor soccer complex or whatever. So you just have to know who your audience is, but also don't be married to that audience. Know that it's going to be flexible,
Yeah, I think you said a really important word that is very powerful, and that's identity. And I think so. In my world, the world of getting at the insights and really understanding why people do what they do. When you talk about identity, that's such a complex aspect of people to understand, because there's the identity that, okay, this is how I want people to see me, but then there's the identity of, this is how I see myself, and then oftentimes how those two either match up or don't match up, and how do I, how should people see me? So yeah. I think I love that perspective of, when you're thinking about that identity, you have to think about the market that you're in, and that kind of thing. But you also have to bring to the table, what are your values? What are your company's values? And how those line up with the audience's values. And that, and the funny thing is, they don't have to align, but you just have to understand how they exist and how they're different, and how you're going to be able to talk about them.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like being in high school, for example. Like, when you're roaming the halls, you see what everybody else is wearing, and you're like, oh God, I'm on the wrong page here. And so you start trying to adapt to what you think other people want to see. But what you don't understand is that outside of your high school, there's a billion other people just like you who have no idea who they are in high school. They don't know what's cool or whatever. So when you apply that to your business, you've got to give yourself a chance to quit trying to speak directly to a specific audience, like I said before, and just really open up as who you are as the business owner. That's the voice. I mean, I'm the voice of Online. You're the voice of Stone's Insights. So it's like, you've just got to be yourself and quit trying to fit a mold. I think a lot of agencies do that. We're a media agency. We're a full service agency. We fit in this bucket and that bucket. And I'm tired of buckets.
Yeah. Hey, quote of the day. Tired of buckets, man.
Tired of buckets.
Hey, that's going on your website.
Yeah, it's going to be my new tagline.
No, I think this is a really powerful thing, because I think we get so caught up in what should we say, and what should we say that's acceptable. And you and I, before we started, we were kind of chatting about a couple of things. And one of the examples is, so a colleague of mine just started a content marketing company here, and she's posted a blog, and part of the imagery and voice of her brand is exuberance, joyfulness, happiness, and those really come across in her pictures. And, it's interesting when you see the feedback that you get when you put those things out. Some people are like, that's cool. But other people are like, well, is that appropriate for a business person to do? And it's, you almost, I agree. You almost have to say, screw it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, because I'm going to attract that kind of person who reflects that. And there are people who I probably won't do business with as a result of that. I think that takes courage, though.
Absolutely. And it takes confidence. And, when I graduated college even, and I was interviewing, I didn't want to try to impress anyone. I wanted to get hired based off of who I was, because I'm not going to be going into an office every day trying to, put on this mask and pretend I'm someone else, because eventually it's going to be found out, So it's just easier to be who you are. And the fact is, you don't want to work with those types of people anyway if they don't fit your vision and your whole vibe,
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's kind of a cool takeaway from our discussion that I think is a really important element, is that first you got to understand who you are, but then you don't have to be everything to everybody. And that's what so many brands fall into, that trap.
Yeah.
Well, we want to get the biggest audience we possibly can. Well, no, maybe not.
Yeah.
So, so the second part I think to talk about is, okay, so that's, it's like we were talking about, there's lots of advice out there, and there's lots of people who say authenticity and this and that. So when we talk about voice, let's talk about some of the ways that you can actually understand that voice, some of the brass tacks about, okay, so it's all good. Yes, you need to have a voice, you need to have courage, but how do you find the most effective way for you when you land that new client and they just don't know?
Right.
How do you we'll talk a little bit about just kind of how you can kind of dig into that, but what are some of the things you do?
Yeah, I always start my relationships off with a consultation of some sort. Sometimes one, sometimes two, just however many we need to ensure that we're going to be a right partner for each other, because not every client is going to be right for me. Let's just say that, to say, because you as a business owner have to protect your intellectual property and, pass that along to who you feel is worthy. So a lot of the things that I look for are just, are you passionate about what you're doing? Are you excited? I'm going to listen to how you talk about your business. For example, you and I actually had a funny conversation a couple weeks ago. And my tagline used to be something about "we deliver," because I was like, that sounds really advertising like. And it just isn't me. I love that you're laughing because it's so true. Because I'm trying to be an agency and not just being myself. And every time I would talk about my agency, it would always be about finding your voice and your digital presence. And boom, done. Okay, so that's what we do. We find your voice. Okay, why am I trying to complicate this?
It's kind of interesting because I think we find the same thing in our work, where one of the most difficult things when you're going in is early on, what is that essence of that brand that is the thing that really drives who they are and how they operate and all that kind of stuff. And so much of it is, I think, just based on, again, that kind of like, what should we do? What do people say we should be, instead of just being true to who you are and putting that out there. There was a great article. Let's see if I can. I should have had it up while we were talking, but there was a great article in Fast Company magazine by these guys, two gentlemen who were just iconic developers of brand images. And it's amazing because their big thing was, well, we have to really dig in and find who that company is, and it's not what they tell us. And I thought that was yeah. So, but it's like, it's tough though. It's like, well, how do you do that? How do you dig into that? And one of the things we found is there's, and this is of course always dependent on budget, time, all that kind of stuff. But if you're really going to get into a voice, you just have to, number one, spend time with that company. And so like whenever we're working on something and we go in and just hang out with the company, but we look at who are they, what are some of the values? We look at the office, what's the office culture, what are the relationships that exist? There's all these kinds of things that you can do and observe that start to help you understand what is the culture of this company.
Right.
And what does it mean to work here? And what is that? And how do people see themselves that work here?
It really is, trying to define your business beyond, Times New Roman 12-point font. It's who are we? How do we feel? And what do we want people to feel when they look at our brand? What do we want people to think about when they think about us, as a company? And the last thing that I want to be known as is dull or, ordinary, mundane, any of that, So I think it's really important to not focus on what others in the industry are doing, whatever your industry is, and just really being open to what speaks to you, because it's most likely going to be a breath of fresh air to see something different in your space. Yeah,
I think this whole idea of we need to follow best practices, that just means you're just doing what everyone else is doing.
Right.
So, that's fine. Use that as a benchmark of, okay, we don't want to suck.
Yeah.
We need to do here.
Benchmark of suckage.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's like, hey, there's a new index that I'm going to create, the suckage index. Right. So, but I mean, it's okay to look at that stuff and compare yourself. And it's like, okay, what's existing out there? But don't don't design your business around being best practices. Be yourself, and then you just understand how you fit into that. So the key thing, I think, a couple of things that you can do to kind of get at who is this company is, like I said, you don't always have the luxury of a lot of time and budget, but some of the things you can do are you can, so for example, whenever we can, we'll do a basic survey of the employees, of the executives, and of customers. So you can start to see how they all look at the same things. And so you start to get a sense of that, and it gives you some data. So when you can do that, it's awesome. Mm-hmm. Going in and just observing. There was when we did some work for an electric utility in Kansas, and one of the things I did is just went in and hung out in the cafeteria, some of the different areas where employees were hanging out. You learn so much just from what it means, day-to-day life means at the company, and it's where it starts to reveal who the nature and character of that company is.
Absolutely, and that's so important, actually. Like when you talk to employees about where they work, nothing about what they say is ever going to be found in your handbook. It's never going to be found in your mission statement. It's not going to be any of those things. What employees find is it's a fun place to work. All the people are really passionate. That's your voice. When you find that the internal teams are actually living and breathing your brand, find out why. And that is your position. That's your statement. Yeah.
So, that is so true. I love that. In a recent project that we did, we discovered that, the theory is, ask your customers and, are they expecting X, Y, and Z in terms of quality and all those kinds of things. And in our discussions, what we discovered was there was a shift in the company in terms of private ownership to public ownership. And that's what was the biggest concern on people's minds. Are we going to be the same company? Are we going to change? Instead of, market-facing issues. Right. And you're right. So it's like,
no one's worried about, is our mission statement going to change?
Yeah. But the cool thing, but the thing in learning that and understanding how they viewed the company and why they were worried help us to understand what was so important about the company.
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely. And culture has a lot to do with that. I think culture is something that's often overlooked, and because there's no ROI that you can attach to culture, no revenue stream. Mm-hmm. But I mean, when you create an environment for the people who work with you, who enjoy it and can create their own passion about what you're doing, I mean, that's the lifetime value right there,
Right. And that's what you need to then translate and reflect in your brand.
Absolutely. Well. Right. I mean, it's all under your nose. And I think that we complicate things all the time. When in reality,
never.
Never. It's right in front of you, and I think that if we can just listen to ourselves and listen to how we describe what we do and the things we enjoy about what we do, we'll really start to be able to tailor that voice and discover what it actually sounds like.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great perspective about how we do try and overcomplicate things a lot of times when it is just a matter of understanding the human nature that exists right in front of us and understand the relationships that exist and not trying to overcomplicate it with all these, the latest trends, the latest algorithms, the latest this and that.
How many keywords can I fit into? I want to sound smart.
Yeah. Well, so I want to wrap up here in just a second, but so I want to just kind of like wrap up with, so here's some of the key things that I thought were really cool that we talked about today. So number one, you got to understand who you are, but it's being true to yourself and realizing that those beliefs, values, and way of being don't have to reflect what everyone thinks should be in the marketplace. It needs to be who you are, and don't worry about trying to be and adjust to fit everybody. It's like you just want to attract the right kind of person. So I think that's a really cool thing. I love this idea of, most of what we need to know is right under our nose. And that's like, we always talk about, there's more than enough data already. You can go out and study, PricewaterhouseCoopers has done 10 studies on organizational design and networked teams and why all that stuff works. Okay, you can go out and find all that stuff, right? But most of it is right under your nose. And it's like, get in there, live and breathe who your client is and their brand, and then reflect that out into the marketplace.
Exactly.
So, awesome. Hey, just as a quick wrap up, I always like just asking, we, as new business owners, you don't probably have much of a life outside, but is there anything that you're doing outside of work that is cool, that's interesting, fun?
Cool and interesting. I don't know. I spent like 8 hours at my best friend's house the other day cleaning.
Well, that you're passionate about. Yeah.
That was more fun than being at my desk. No, I really try to fill my free time with family and friends and get myself away from my desk. To remember that there is life outside of these walls. I'm not just some princess trapped in a tower that I can actually leave. But yeah, I mean, just really trying to, I'm taking self-care to a new level this year.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just like face mask, read, like do the things that are good for your soul and your mind. And I don't know, try to get through the busyness of starting a business.
Well, and I think, though, we laugh about it, but I think it is a really important thing, because a lot of the audience for this will be people who have either started their own firms or they're very entrepreneurial. And that is something that we often forget. And yet we have to remember that you got to take care of yourself if you're going to be in this for the long term.
Absolutely. And, burnout is real.
Yeah. On that note, thanks so much for joining me today, and I appreciate all your perspectives.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kent.